what is this last 8% all about?
Focus on these last 8% moments is because they're more important than others. We do actually avoid the conversation altogether. The brain will try to protect us, and so that's what will cause us to avoid rather than take a risk. Not only are we not thinking as clearly, but we become more certain we're right, we're a little more judgmental, we're a little more reactive. You can't just run and walk away. Couple things you can do is you can drink water.
Love that.
That's actually.
Thanks for joining me. And today we have in the studio none other than Bill Benjamin, entrepreneur and keynote speaker, Institute for Health and Human Potential. Bill Benjamin is a top emotional intelligence keynote speaker and a thought leader on the subjects of leadership and peak performance. He is a regular contributor to CEO Magazine, Training Magazine, as well as other leadership publications. As a math and computer science guy, Bill discovered the power of managing emotions while he was working in the technology industry. And he joins us today on the show to talk about the last 8%. Bill, welcome to the podcast. It's such an honor to have you here with us.
It's an honor to be here.
Great. So before we dive deep into the last 8%, how has Bill's career journey been like?
Well, it's a bit of an unusual one in that, as you mentioned in my introduction, I have degrees in mathematics and computer science. And I spent 14 years at a computer software company, and I was a high performer. And of course, what do organizations do with the high performers? Well, they give them more work and burn them out, and then they promote them. Well, the challenge is I wasn't a very good leader. I wasn't a very good manager. Didn't inspire people. I didn't create a great culture. And it was a challenging time in my life. And that was actually when I got exposed to our early work in the area of emotional intelligence. And it really helped me. It really made a difference for me. And I, spent 4 years, doing the coaching, the assessments, the training, and it made a big difference for me. So eventually I decided to leave the computer software industry and do this for a living.
Wow, that's great. So what is this last 8% all about?
Yeah, that came up about 7 or 8 years ago. We were working with two executives at a large company who weren't getting along.
Okay.
Like that ever happens. And they were coached to have a conversation with each other about the impact they were having on each other.
Okay.
They went and had the conversation. They came back from the conversation and their individual coaches asked them how did it go. And both of them said, oh, went fine. Well, the coaches know better. So the coaches pushed them and said, yeah, but did you say everything we agreed you were going to say? And both of them effectively said, you know what? I got 85, 90, 95% of the way there. The other person started reacting and I held back.
Okay.
I didn't really say that last 5 or 10%, the part that really needed to be said. And everyone has that experience of sometimes not really saying that last 5 or 10%. So we did a study of 34,000 people, and we determined that on average, it's 7.56%, which we rounded up to 8. So the last 8% that people feel they leave unsaid in a difficult conversation.
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I just want to hold on to this thought here. So is it all about the conversation, the last part of the conversation? For a layman language, would that make sense?
Yeah, some people just avoid the conversation altogether. They avoid all 100% of it.
Okay.
And also people have that experience of, they have all the best intention, they get in there and it doesn't, they feel like it's not going the way it should go. The other person sees where it's going. And then, they hold back. As we workshopped it though, people said to us, well, it isn't just difficult last 8% conversations. There's the tough decisions too. There's the easy ones where everyone's agreeing and I don't have to take a risk. But as soon as I'm trying something I'm not familiar with, or I'm going to make a decision that might upset someone, that's a last 8% decision. And the reason that we focus on these last 8% moments is because they're more important than others. And we know that because of the cortisol effect. So we love brain science at IHHP. The cortisol effect is that when there is tension, uncertainty, pressure, conflict, cortisol gets released into the brain, does a number of things, but one of the things it does is it causes memories to sear in. So So people remember how you show up in that last 8% moment. They don't really remember
Ah,
what you're doing
yeah,
82%,
yeah, yeah, you're
right? When
right.
everyone's getting along and the deadlines are being met.
Correct.
So
That's
those last 8% moments establish your reputation as a leader. They actually establish culture, right? They're critical to success.
so. Do you feel people usually avoid the last 8%, or is it on purpose, or is it out of any fear or trigger? What is it like?
In our research, 68% of people, their predictable default behavior, their neurological wiring is to avoid. And
Okay.
it's for many reasons. I mean, when I first got promoted, I used to avoid making tough decisions because I didn't want people not to like me. I got promoted from amongst a group of friends, and
Hmm.
suddenly I'm having to make decisions where people aren't going to like me. It is absolutely out of fear. If you've been if you've been in a conversation with someone once, maybe a boss, and they got defensive,
Okay.
well, now you're wired. That was a cortisol moment. That was the last 8% moment. Now you're going to avoid. So there's many different reasons why people avoid, but usually it's they don't want to upset people. They don't want people not to
Hmm.
like them. They're afraid. It's all emotions. So when we get to the part where we talk about, how do you handle the last 8% moment skillfully, it's going to be about emotions.
So, isn't it true that every time that we let our emotions play on us, we are going to be fearful? We are going to not use that last 8%, like you said. But at the same time, whether you use it or not, whether you're fearful or not, you are anyways going to upset someone or the other. Isn't that true? I mean, you never be able to make everyone happy. Like Steve Jobs said, if you want to make everyone happy, go sell ice creams, right? So,
Don't be a leader, sell ice cream.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, but the amount of stress and anxiety I know that I've experienced
Huh.
at having to make a decision where someone's going to be upset. I mean, in the case of a conversation, though, I mean, people do actually avoid the conversation altogether, right? They never give the person the feedback. We work with organizations around creating both high care and high accountability cultures.
Hmm.
A lot of our clients are good on the high care. They're not great on the high accountability. Those conversations, they're just not happening. Their performance feedback isn't happening. So people do just avoid the tough conversations altogether.
Hmm.
And by the way, I mentioned that in our research, 68% of people, their predictable default behavior is to
Yeah.
avoid. Well, there's
Yeah.
the other 32%. And I can fall into that category sometimes where I'm in a difficult conversation, the other person starts getting defensive. Rather than avoiding, I actually step in and I come on too strong and now making a mess of it. So we talk about people either being avoiders or make a messers.
Okay. So they are
Yeah.
also a part of this.
Oh, absolutely. And what we're teaching is that there's a middle ground
Okay.
where you push through the discomfort if you're an avoider,
Hmm.
but you handle it skillfully if you're a make a messer.
Hmm.
And of course, we're more complicated than a simple binary choice like that. There's certain situations in which people might be more likely to avoid, like, dealing with somebody senior
Hmm.
versus, I don't know, when my teenage daughter's yelling at me,
Yeah,
I'm a
true.
lot more likely to yell back at her, right? And by the way,
Yeah.
all I'm doing in that moment that my teenager is yelling at me and I'm yelling back is actually developing her neural pathways to yell when she's frustrated, right? That's all
I
I'm doing is teaching her
agree.
to yell.
I
So I'm
agree.
really working on that.
I think that they just test our patience. I have a teenager and I think they just test our patience and everything goes for a toss at that point of time. But you're so correct, it's not just people who avoid, it's people who don't avoid and then they create the mess and they just come in between. But I'm sure let's tackle the people who avoid because I think majority of the people in the business world and the corporate world have this avoidance strategy. What
Yes.
is a particular narrative that goes on in the mind of people that makes them feel, no, 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 I'll just stop here. I don't want to go any further.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's that cortisol effect where typically they've had a past experience
Hmm.
where somebody didn't react well to their feedback, or
Okay.
somebody got upset when they made a decision. Could
Okay.
be in their current environment, or it could have
Mhm.
been a previous job. It could even be in their upbringing, right?
Okay.
All our neural pathways are developed, when we're children. So
Hmm.
they've had some sort of past experience, and so the brain is there to protect us. So under pressure in the last 8% moment, we're wired to default to protection, not risk.
Hmm.
So the brain will try to protect us, and so that's what will cause us to avoid rather than take a risk, like holding a peer accountable or giving somebody performance feedback or making a decision that not everyone's going to be happy with. I actually used to sometimes make the decision not the best decision, but based on who would scream the loudest if we didn't get their way, and kind of give in to that person who was going to scream the loudest because I didn't want to deal with them.
Right. True. So, if they don't want to deal with them, definitely there is some emotional baggage that is going on, like you mentioned, correct? Now, when that
Yes.
emotional baggage is going on, what are some of the techniques that somebody can use to build that power inside of them to be confident and not let those emotions overplay, whether they jump in or they stay away? What are some of the emotional tactics we can use?
Yeah, I mean, so this is where our emotional intelligence work comes in,
Mm.
and it starts with understanding the brain and the fact that the same wiring that protects us in the jungle if a tiger jumps out at us and we move to our fight or flight is exactly the same wiring that tries to protect us if
Um,
somebody's
mm.
challenging us and we're getting defensive.
True.
And so that's the emotional part of the brain that's there to protect us.
Mm.
So number one is understanding that part of our brain, and the self-awareness is the foundation.
Mm.
So being aware of what that feels like. So if I'm in a conversation, your body's your early warning system. My chest will get a little tight. My hands will actually shake a little bit. People talk about feeling heat. Um, People talk about upset stomach, so you'll kind of notice it in your body first. So before you can manage, you have to have the awareness that you've been triggered emotionally.
Okay. So that will stop you. So your brain is going into like a survival mode. That
Going into
just,
fight or flight, avoid make a mess, same thing. It's going into your
mm,
fight or flight, avoid make a
okay.
mess,
Okay.
to try to protect you. Yes.
Okay. But then does that really help while we are into the businesses? There are going to be a lot of conversations, negotiations where we have to, come to that last 8%, like you said. And it looks like it's going to be very crucial. But if you're avoiding it, where does it take you in terms of your career and business growth?
Oh, I mean, I mean, the Navy has a great quote. We've done work with the U.S. Navy.
Uh,
They say ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for.
uh,
I mean,
True.
we are so much our better selves when we are able to get out of the harbor and take some risks and have that tough conversation, make that tough decision. Because if not, then we're holding it in. And then,
Yeah.
70% of people in organizations don't speak up when they see a mistake or they have an idea they think could help.
Ah,
Imagine what that does to innovation. Imagine what that does to
right.
safety. Imagine what that does to productivity. And so, absolutely, we need to create an environment where people feel safe, psychological safety. B, give them tools and skills to overcome that fear, to overcome that emotion,
Mhm.
to speak up. And it's really interesting, the research. There are two factors. So organizations need people to, show up and perform and behave in a certain way. Half of that is their own internal skills and abilities. The other half is the environment. So again, if you want to create an environment where people speak up, but senior leaders are shooting their ideas down, they're going to be less likely to speak up. So we
Yeah.
we, we do
True.
work both at that individual level, but also at the culture level,
Hmm. So that means
because you've got to have both.
organizations have to put in that work so that it flows top down.
Absolutely. When we do our culture system work, it absolutely starts with the senior team. We do an assessment of the senior team, the whole organization. We do interviews, and then we do workshops with the senior team because the CEO and the senior team, that they have to model it. They have to own it. It can't just be, oh yeah, we need to do culture because we value our people, but everyone else needs that. No, they have to be in there. They have to own it. So that absolutely is when we do our culture work, we start with the senior team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree on this. I think this is so important that you have to make sure that you can speak up in boardrooms and in meetings because that's where innovation and everything takes place. So I think that is so true. So, Bill, what would be your big piece of advice to our listeners who are looking to succeed in their career life?
I mean, is to recognize the importance of the things we're talking about. So, technical skills, job knowledge, intelligence, those are all important. By the way, you can't even really get smarter unless you're under the age of 16. And I don't think too many of your listeners are under the age of 16. So you can't even really improve your IQ. So, of course, you need to keep up on your job knowledge. But the key differentiator, and by the way, this came from the Harvard study, that came out in 1996 in Dan Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, that EQ counted for twice as much as IQ and technical skills combined in terms of determining success of these Harvard graduates, excuse me, who were studied. So number one is recognize the importance of your last 8% moments and managing emotions in those last 8% moments. So number one, putting time, energy, into that, getting coaching, getting training, whatever it is that will help. Um, in terms of, we were talking about as somebody's maybe approaching a last 8% moment and they're feeling that nervousness, they're feeling that fear, they're feeling that avoidance, or they're starting to get anxious and they might make a mess. We have a technique that we teach, and we developed this technique with the US Navy over 24 years ago, and it's called the SOS.
Wow. Okay.
And we intentionally use the SOS metaphor because it's kind of like we're going underwater. Our emotions are taking us underwater, and we want to get above water with a life preserver. So the first S is stop. To disconnect from the trigger, not as an avoidance strategy, but in order to, do something to then re-engage more skillfully. Um, when you're alone, you want to get up, change your body posture, go for a walk, do something that'll give you some sense of calm and peace. Draw, pray, exercise, listen to music, whatever it is. The draft folder was designed for emotional intelligence. Write what you want to write. Don't put anybody in the to list just in case. Put that email in the draft folder. And I've done this a number of times. You go away, I come back. Never once have I looked at that email that I wrote in the triggered state and thought, yeah, that's the email I should send. That's me at my best.
Wow. That's
Um,
great.
so that's when you're alone. When you're with people, and you're on a Zoom meeting, or you're in a meeting, or you're with a spouse or partner, you can't just run and walk away. Couple things you can do is you can drink water.
Love that.
That's actually very soothing to our
Yeah.
physiology and creates a bit of a pause. Your fingers will actually start to curl. Maybe
Uh-huh.
not into a full fist if you're
Yeah.
fully triggered, but even if you're a little, so you can open your palms. If you're sitting, you can rest them on your lap.
Uh-huh.
Um, if you are in fight, make a mess mode, you'll actually be leaning forward, making yourself bigger. You can lean back. If you're standing, you can kind of step
That's
back,
okay.
relax. The other now, if you're in flight avoid mode, you're going to be in the opposite. You're going to be making yourself smaller,
Yeah.
open up, and lean in.
True.
So you create these little pattern interrupts that give you just enough space to do the second part of the strategy, which is the O and SOS, which is oxygenate.
What's that?
That's your deep conscious breath.
Ha.
The
Okay.
intake of a
Just
large
like
amount of oxygen.
relax.
Well, the intake of a large amount of oxygen actually minimizes the chemicals that your emotional system has released. The cortisol actually dissipates the adrenaline and the
Um,
cortisol.
okay.
So deep conscious breath is very powerful. Then you can seek information. That's the third part. Stop, oxygenate, seek information, and we start by seeking information that can help us.
Huh.
Because so often we're amplifying the negative, we're assuming a negative intention, we're reacting. We can also ask ourselves, how do I want to show up? Well, you know what? I want to step in and say my piece. I
Uh-huh.
want to speak my truth. I don't want to sit here and say nothing. Or I don't want to make a mess. I want to say this skillfully. I'm not going to send this email. I'm going to, get on a Zoom call with the person. So we can seek information that can help us manage ourselves. So the SOS strategy is what we teach people to be their better selves, have more of their cognitive ability, and be less triggered emotionally in those last 8% moments.
Wow. So I really like that. So like you said, drink the water, right? Which I also have it. So drink the water.
Yep.
Try and relax your fists and your fingers, correct?
Open your palms. Yep.
Open it up. Don't just sit like this, like a cross arm. You can relax back. You can sit back, take some nice deep breaths, like you said. So I think those are some wonderful strategies.
I mean, and it's amazing how well it works, and you'll be
Yeah.
amazed because when we're emotionally triggered, not only are we not thinking as clearly, but we become more certain we're right. We're a little
Yeah.
more judgmental. We're a little more reactive. We're more likely to either shut down, right, and avoid,
Huh.
or start to get reactive and defensive and make a mess. So that emotional part of our brain, that's literally your avoid, make a mess part of the brain.
Right. And that's why you
And
oxygenate. You give that oxygen to your brain and it really sends those signals. Wow.
yes, yes. And,
That's
and and then the seek information, the last part is really to check your thinking.
hmm.
Because if you're in the jungle and the tiger jumps out at you,
Hmm.
right? And you get scratched. If you're in the jungle later and you hear wind rustling in the bushes, what do
Uh,
you assume the wind is? You
mm,
assume it's a tiger. Well, there's two
right.
tigers. There's the real
Correct.
one and the one you imagine. The emotional brain doesn't differentiate between a real and a perceived threat.
Oh my God.
So if you think, oh, this person's trying to make me look bad, that's why they're criticizing, or they're not listening, or they're not, or this is going to go
That's
badly,
humanity.
the brain reacts as though it's actually happening. So
Right.
one of the seek information questions we suggest for people is to ask yourself, is this wind or tiger?
Wow.
Am I amplifying the negative? Am I assuming the
Yeah.
worst?
Yeah.
And by the way, the person we do the most assuming the worst about is actually ourselves.
Ourselves. Absolutely. We won't get that promotion. We won't get there. This is not going to happen to us.
I'm not going to be
Absolutely. We
good at
fill
this. I'm no
ourselves
good at
up
these
with that.
conversations. I'm going to make the wrong
Yeah.
decision, right? We beat ourselves up incessantly. So we can also check in with ourselves and say,
Yes.
okay, am I
Absolutely.
amplifying the negative about myself?
Absolutely. Wow. That was so great, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It was such an honor to have you and you share your insights with us.
I was happy to be here. It was fun. Great conversation. Thank you.
It definitely was. And thank you so much. And this one's for our listeners. This is Belle Benjamin and Payal Nanjiani wishing you loads of success in your career life. God bless.